Hey everyone, this is Larissa Finley with Computerease. I'm also the VP of Education for the Greater St. Louis MGMA, and we're going to get started here. We are recording this, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys can all hear me. So if you could type in the chat really quick what you're having for lunch today as you are listening to the webinar. So let's see, we get oh, fuzzy tacos from Kathy McDonald. I'm really jealous. I have Breadco waiting for me after this. Nothing yet from Mark. Anne is having a salad. Vicky's having nothing. Karen's having a chicken salad. Well, I hope those of you that don't have lunch will get something soon. But in the meat, oh, and a protein shake for Tara. Perfect. Wonderful. So for a few reminders of what is coming up for Greater St. Louis MGMA events. Our next meeting is being held February 12th, 2020 from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Orlando's in Maryland Heights and is featuring our annual Medicare updates. Ellen Barra, who's the Senior Analyst of Provider Outreach and Education with Wisconsin Physician Services, will be covering the Medicare Part B updates for 2020. Then after that, the next educational event will be March 11th with Michael Stagowski, who will be speaking on 401k benefit reviews at Orlando's in South County. And that's from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor for that, please visit the Greater St. Louis MGMA website for more information. So that brings us to today. I'm pleased to announce our speaker, Ryan Haislar, president of Computerease. He's also my boss. So Computerease was started by Ike Haislar, Ryan's father, in 1984 to help business owners harness the new advances in technology. Ryan has over 26 years of experience in the IT industry and has helped transform Computerease into a comprehensive IT support company. Ryan first became involved in the Greater St. Louis MGMA 15 years ago, where he met people who would become his first medical practice clients. Ryan has some of those same people as clients even now, and the largest percentage of our clients are medical practices. But before I turn it over to Ryan, I'd like to remind everyone that you are muted during this webinar just to reduce background noise. However, we strongly encourage you to use the all panelist selection in the chat box like you did for your lunch sharing earlier. And this is a great way to share comments, examples, and questions. And I'm going to be monitoring the chat stream throughout the webinar. And as time allows, we'll be able to share a few questions. So just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan and he will start our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning. Who is ready to talk about security risks and precautions to consider when using mobile devices in your medical practice? How much fun can that be? All right, so as Larissa kind of gave a little bit about my background and background on the company, my father started the company in 1984. We built IBM compatible computers, which back in that day was kind of a big deal. I've been here for about 26 years. I've literally done everything in this company from take out the trash to build networks and do cybersecurity now. So for the last 15 or so years, I've been exclusively focused on helping businesses with technology. We've been doing a lot of work with medical practices in that time. We've, like Larissa said, grown into a business IT support company, clients across multiple industries and various sizes. You know, in the past, our biggest concern was just making sure that networks for clients were properly configured. However, you know, in the last 5 or 6 years, that's really the simple part. Now it's all just concerned about security. The number of cyber threats that we see grows all the time. And so that's our number one concern today, is making sure that our clients are safe in the medical field or in any field for that matter. So today we're going to cover the benefits of having providers and staff using mobile devices in your practice, the security risks associated with the use of those mobile devices in your practice, and then what protections you need to have in place when using those devices in your practice. So we all love our mobile devices. Some of us more than others, but most of us love our mobile devices. They give us significant functionality. They give us flexibility in our day-to-day lives, and they make it super easy to work remotely. So some of the benefits of using mobile devices in our practice. We all know that using mobile devices like smartphones and tablets, sometimes they're owned by the practice. Functionality and flexibility of these devices can be a great asset and help us deliver excellent patient care. So some of the slides that are following here are based on a research article published in the Pharmacy and Therapeutics a few years ago, focused specifically on how healthcare professionals are using mobile devices and the impact that they have from using these devices. So some of the capabilities that they give us are communication. So like voice calling, video conferencing, text and email, hospital information system access like EHRs, EMRs, PACS. They give us access to informational resources like textbooks and guidelines, medical literature, drug references. They give us clinical software like disease diagnosis, medical calculators, things like that. So some of the benefits also would be convenience. We have limitless information available in the palm of our hands, portability and speed of getting exactly the information that we need when we need it, help us make better clinical decisions. So studies reported an increase in the appropriateness of diagnosis and the treatment decisions when mobile device clinical decisions. They give us access to critical information for evidence-based medical decisions. Also help us improve accuracy. So improve the completeness and accuracy of patient documentation, give us more accurate diagnosis codes, more frequent documentation of side effects, and increased medical safety through reduced errors. They give us increased efficiency and enhanced productivity, allowing us to work faster, streamlining our processes. Every little bit helps, right? So they also give us increased quality of data management and accessibility. So we're more likely to input information correctly in a timely manner when we have a mobile device readily available. So an example of a commonly used mobile app, this is a soft phone app from one of the voice over IP phone system providers that we represent. And so this soft phone is kind of popular with medical providers. Using your cell phone, you can call from the soft phone app on your phone, and maybe you have to call an after hours, a patient after hours, and you're out somewhere and all you have is your cell phone. So what are your options? Well, none of them are probably really good, but if you have a voice over IP phone system, you can use the app, call the patient from your cell phone, and as far as the patient is concerned, you're at the office because that's the number that you're calling from. So they never reveal the provider's cell phone number. So there's a lot of benefits for using medical practice or medical devices in our practice, obviously, but we also have increased security risks. So I'll start off with two scary situations to kind of illustrate some of the risks of using mobile devices in a medical practice or just in any business. So I spend a lot of time at my kids' sporting events. I have two daughters and they're in 6th grade and 4th grade. So at just about every game, there are a dozen or so siblings who've been dragged to the game with their parents and who are while the parents are preoccupied with the game, every single time, at least one of the kids ends up with one of the parents' cell phones and disappears into a huddle of kids for pretty much the entire game. So here's a not too far-fetched scenario to consider. So let's assume that one of these parents who has their kid commandeer their phone is a provider or a nurse at your practice and has medical information, maybe just passwords, or maybe just their clinic email on their personal smartphone, which is now under the control of a 7-year-old for about an hour. So while the parent is engaged in watching the game, the 7-year-old and their friends want to download a new app, right? So that fun new app brings with it malware, which can take control of the nurse's smartphone. Maybe it enables a keylogger, maybe it just steals data from the device, or maybe it even allows the hacker full control of the phone. And quite possibly the malware could remain silent for a few days or weeks while it causes damage, steals data, anything like that. Then the provider comes back into the office on Monday, connects their newly infected smartphone inside of your private office network. That's kind of a scary thought. So scary situation number 2 involves using social engineering and fake text messages. So this photo is Kevin Mitnick and myself at a IT conference sometime last year. So Kevin Mitnick has been billed the world's greatest hacker. He's actually a really nice guy, like it says in the caption there. So Kevin was wanted by the federal government for hacking some banks and some federal agencies. He was arrested, put in solitary confinement because they thought that if he could access a payphone in prison, that he could launch nuclear weapons. That was the degree to which the government was confident that he was a good hacker. So they put him in solitary for a while. He's obviously been out of prison for quite a long time. He is now a white hat hacker. He was never doing it to be malicious. He never stole anything. He said, I never took any money. I never stole any information. I just did it because when I started doing it, it wasn't even illegal. And I just wanted to see if I could do it. So he's one of the good guys now. He's a white hat hacker. He has a company. Large organizations pay his company to hack them because they want to know how they're hackable. So Kevin was at this conference, and on stage, he gave a story of how mobile phones and texting can play a part in a social engineering attack. So a social engineering attack is when you try to manipulate a person into doing something that allows you into their network or into their systems. So his example was the CFO of a company is going on a trip or is at a golf tournament. So the hacker gets the executive assistant's personal cell phone number. Hacker sends a spoofed text message that looks like it's coming from the CFO that says something like, hey, when Kevin calls, go ahead and release the third quarter financials to him. And by the way, don't call me or text me because I'm on the golf course or in a conference or otherwise occupied. The hacker then calls the assistant, who will then send him the confidential information. There's a 95% chance that that executive assistant is going to follow through exactly as requested because, after all, the CFO sent the message and told him what to do. So those are just 2 ways, in which you could possibly have a security incident just because of just because of a mobile device. So now that I've scared you a little bit, let's break down the 8 biggest security threats to your practice associated with mobile device use. So if any of you have seen any of my other cybersecurity presentations, this is always the number one. Your employees are your number one threat. Even good employees make mistakes, delete files, click on phishing emails, log into compromised websites. Oftentimes employees will use free and unsecured file sharing apps like Dropbox to share confidential information simply because they don't know better and they don't think to tell you about it. So the trick there is obviously we need to make sure that our employees are trained well. So the number 2 is data leakage. So apps that can see and transmit data, even company data maybe. User errors, like uploading company information to public drives, copying confidential information, sending an email to the incorrect person, or maybe just sending confidential information in an email to themselves. So my older daughter has an iPhone, and I've trained her to be really vigilant, easy for me to say, about what she installs on that iPhone. So I actually make her ask me before she installs any apps, and she actually does ask me. So one simple makeup app that she wanted to download was just a face of like a mannequin, and you could draw on the screen with your finger and put makeup and all kinds of things on the mannequin picture that was on the screen. So when she wanted to install that app, I said, sure, fine, let's look at what permissions it needs. So to install the makeup app, it needed phone location, access to contacts, access to call history, access to files, access to the phone number of the device. And that was for a kid's makeup app. So obviously I told her that amount of access to personal information for a kid's game was ridiculous. And she ended up not downloading that. She installed a different app. So just a little example of how installing a seemingly innocent, harmless application could allow someone to have access to your data that's on a mobile device. So number 3 is social engineering. Mobile-only email, the mail that you see on your smartphone, usually only shows the name of the person, but not the full email address that the email came from, which makes it a lot easier to trick someone in a social engineering attack. Phishing attacks outside the mailbox. So text messages, messaging apps, games, social media applications, things like that. There are a lot of times are interactive and they can send messages. Hey, do you want to be my friend? Can you play this game with me? And ask for personal information that way. Mixing of personal and work email addresses. So you might have your work email set up with your personal email in a mailbox. If you get that mailbox hacked, somebody gets access to the mailbox, possibility that they have access to work information that exists in that same mailbox. And so to give you a little example, what a phishing email looks like, this is a little zoomed out. The important part we'll zoom in on a minute. But down at the bottom right here, it shows Microsoft logo. It says your password is expired. Click on this link down here, portal.office.com. That link doesn't really go to portal.office.com. It goes to a hacker's website where you'll then enter in your credentials. And now the hacker has access to your Office 365 mailbox. So if we take a closer look here, the address that it's from is MS Online Services Team at email.microfstonline.com instead of microsoftonline.com. So there's just a kind of little bit of juxtaposition of the couple letters there, and now we've fooled someone who's not paying a lot of attention into giving us their credentials to log into their mailbox. So just, again, super easy things that make it very simple for someone to hack and get access to your accounts. So number 4, risks of other Wi-Fi networks. So connecting to public Wi-Fi allows others to see data that you've transmitted from your device if it's not encrypted. Man-in-the-middle attacks, where someone intercepts the data between those two parties, right? Back to Kevin Mitnick. So at his presentation at that IT conference, he did a Wi-Fi impersonation. So we were at a Marriott hotel, so he made a fake wireless network using this little thing called a Raspberry Pi that fits in his pocket. So he made a fake network that was called Marriott Conference. And if someone were to join that Marriott Conference fake Wi-Fi network that he created, he now has the ability to send messages to that computer through his hacking tools. And in his example, he popped up an Adobe update message. And he said, usually, you pop the message up once and somebody will say, no, I don't want to install this update. You pop the message up twice and they're like, okay, no, I don't want to install the update. You pop it up 3 times and okay, fine. I'll just relent and I'll let you do the Adobe update that you want to do. Only problem is that the hacker was displaying that pop-up and it wasn't an Adobe update. It was a piece of malware, and now you've infected your device. So just the risk of connecting to a hotel conference Wi-Fi network runs the risk of allowing a hacker to compromise your system. So number 5, out-of-date devices. So smartphones, tablets, smaller connected devices, they don't come with any kind of guarantee of timely and ongoing software updates. Manufacturers don't always update the devices in an effective manner, and customers just often don't update the devices even if the updates are available. Also, Internet of Things creates open doors to your network. So simple things like a postage machine, or maybe a Wi-Fi, or a network-connected refrigerator, or any kind of a monitoring application. Maybe it's a thermostat or a heating and cooling control system. Those are really common. So those are IoT or Internet of Things, and those devices could have vulnerabilities in them that will allow someone to take control of them and then take control of your network. So number 6 is mixing corporate and personal data. So how simple would it be to mistakenly or purposely upload a business file to Google Drive or any other type of cloud sharing application from your work computer to get access to it on your personal mobile device? Just having access to both the personal and the corporate data on a single device could be a recipe for disaster, because we all make mistakes. So number 7, poor password hygiene. Using the same passwords for work and personal accounts, or just using the same username password combination in multiple places is risky. Not having a PIN or a password on your phone is risky. These days, not using two-factor authentication, or 2FA, sometimes it's called MFA, is extraordinarily risky. You should be using two-factor or multi-factor authentication whenever and wherever possible. And that's on mobile devices, that's on laptops, that's on desktop computers, that's on websites, that's everywhere. Any place where you can use 2FA, you should be using it. And if you don't know what 2FA is, so normally you always had a username and a password. Put that in, hit OK, you're connected. Passwords are really easy to get from people. They're easy to guess and crack. Like we just showed in that Microsoft Online demo or slide, it's very easy for someone to fool someone else into giving them their credentials. So if you have two-factor or multi-factor, you use the username and password like you did before. That's your first factor. And then you have a second factor, sometimes even more than one factor, but at least a second factor, such as a authenticator app that's on a cell phone, or a key fob, or a question, what was your favorite sporting team, or what street did you live on in 5th grade? Something like that, where it's not just, you can't just steal what street I lived on in 5th grade. You can't just steal my key fob. You have to actually have access to it physically or know something personally about me. So always we should have two-factor or multi-factor anytime we can. Not all devices and not all services allow it, but if we can have it, we should certainly be using it. Number 8 is physical device breaches. So a lost or unattended device, stolen as well, especially without a PIN or a password and full data encryption, is extraordinarily risky. A study from Ponemon says 35% of professionals indicated that their work devices had no mandated security for a mobile device in place. About half of those people surveyed had no password, PIN, biometric security, or anything else guarding their device, and no encryption in place. So at the very minimum, we need the lock screen with a password or a PIN number, so that if your device is inactive for a minute or 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is, the screen locks and you have to put in a passcode of some kind to get access into it again. Somebody can still hack the device by plugging into it if it's not encrypted, but at least it's a little bit of security. And it's easy for everyone to do. So with all these risks, how do we protect ourselves? So as in all of our cybersecurity presentations, it's layers of security. There's almost never a single solution. There's no one magic bullet that covers all the bases. So in cybersecurity, it's always layers. The next 4 slides will review a couple of different approaches to mobile devices, and then we'll dive into some actionable ways that you can protect your practice. So all we need is some more acronyms, right? Sometimes they seem like just a bunch of alphabet soup, and this was too good not to share. But these acronyms are actually important to know. So first one is BYOD. BYOD is bring your own device, where employees bring their personal devices to the office and use them for work-related tasks. Unfortunately, this is the most often used mobile device policy. It's also the least expensive until and unless a breach occurs as a result of BYOD, and then it's a much more expensive option. Gives the employee the most freedom to choose a device, but it also provides minimal control over security protocols for the practice. And this one's not on this slide, but BYOD is the most dangerous to your practice. So choose your own device is like a middle ground. Businesses will provide a set of pre-approved mobile devices and allow an employee to choose. Usually the company might own that device. Has varying costs depending on what device. Gives the employee moderate freedom to choose a device and moderate control over security protocols, just depending on the configuration. And then sort of on the other end of the spectrum, we have a corporate-owned, personally enabled device. So employees are granted access to a mobile device that's owned and managed by the company. This is the least common option. It's also the most expensive option, at least initially, and again, unless it prevents you from being hacked or breached, in which case it's not expensive at all. Gives the employee no freedom to choose a device and has the highest ability for the company or practice to enforce security policy. So the ideal situation. If someone asked me, Ryan, what would be the ideal situation to protect our practice, when we use mobile devices and things, I would tell them that only devices that are controlled by the business and that are only used for business purposes should be allowed on the main company network. And personally owned devices, including laptops from home, are never to be connected to the private company network. So let's break down into a couple to a little bit more detail and discuss 7 ways that we can protect your practice while still using mobile devices. These are those layers that I discussed a minute ago. And while it would be ideal that everyone would take every one of these precautions, I understand it's not necessarily realistic to expect every practice to be able to do all of these things. So if you can't implement everything, at least implement as many of these items as you possibly can. If you just implement a few of these items, you're likely going to be greatly improving your security posture. And again, doesn't necessarily have to meet Ryan's ideal world, because we don't always get what's ideal, but at least we can have something that we're shooting for. So the number one way is company-owned devices. So if we have a company-owned device, we control everything. More control equals more security. Has that higher initial cost, but it aids us in preventing costly data breaches and HIPAA violations. So number 2, we install MDM technology. So mobile device management software, MDM, allows tight control over the use of the mobile devices. It also allows for remote management of the device and also remote data destruction in the event the device is lost or stolen. And I don't have a specific slide for this, but it is imperative that all devices, especially mobile devices, are encrypted. Most MDM software will enable the management of the device encryption. MDM tools are also usually subscription-based, and they do have a cost. There's lots of different options, but generally about $10 or less per month per device. And there's a couple of really popular ones. Mass 360 is the most popular name. Sophos also has a product, MDM product. Those are fairly common and pretty popular. Number 3 is requiring strong authentication. Hopefully, most of us already have at least a 4-digit PIN on our devices. But I would suggest a PIN longer than 4 characters, like I have on my device, or biometric security, like a fingerprint or facial recognition, depending on what options your device provides. At the very least, though, you need to have that 4-digit PIN. Number 4 is enable device location and remote wiping services. So this is usually included with an MDM solution. Again, that's that mobile device management product that we talked about a minute ago. But like many things, it's not necessarily enabled by default, or it could be an option that you have to add. So we need to be sure that we have the functionality enabled and configured so that it's available when we need it. This is how you'll protect your company's data in the event that a device is lost or stolen. This gives us the ability to track the device, or most importantly, remotely wipe, delete everything, the device. So as an example, the Chicago Bears lost an iPad with their entire playbook on it. Luckily though, their IT team was able to remotely wipe all of that data from the iPad, and nothing was compromised because they had an MDM solution in place. So number 5, acceptable use policies. So having an acceptable use policy that specifically outlines how mobile devices are to be used in the practice. AUP should outline things like whether or not personal devices can even be used, what networks can be used for corporate and or personal devices. Is there a separate device that is there a separate network that personal devices need to connect to? Precautions that must be taken if personal devices are allowed. Should outline which applications are allowed on company-owned devices, which websites may be visited on company-owned devices, which cloud services like Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. can be used, and which device types they can be used on, personal or company-owned only. Number 6 will be requiring immediate notification for lost or stolen devices. So this is something which should probably be included in an employee handbook or an AUP for mobile devices, because even if we have all that great remote wipe and tracking technology, the amount of time a device is in the wrong hands before it's wiped is critical to protect your data. And number 7 is train your employees. So like we said earlier, your employees are your number 1 threat. So if we train folks on what to do and what not to do, then we have a greater probability that bad things will not happen to us. We have training that we provide to our clients, and hopefully, everyone should be doing HIPAA training, but you should also be doing just general cybersecurity training as well. Now, if you must allow BYOD, Make sure that you have a separate network that's just for the bring your own device. So what we mean by that is having a separate wireless network that if folks need to come in and use their wireless device in the office, we've got a separate network for that. That separate network should have no access internally to the company. It would only have access to the internet. So if you've got the right equipment, this could actually be as simple as just having your IT provider log into your network remotely and configure a new wireless network and VLAN segment. If you don't know what the VLAN segment is, I can explain that in a question later if someone has that question, or you can contact me and I can explain it better. It's a little complicated to try to do here. Also, if you use BYOD, you still need strong authentication on the device, a PIN or biometric, trained employees, and an AUP. And really as many of the 7 things that we discussed a minute ago as you can do. It just becomes tricky with BYOD because you don't own the device. So you're going to be trying to control someone's use of their own device. So for allowing staff to use the devices, we certainly can't let them store company data on the devices or send files from the office to their personal or company Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc., because now those files are accessible on a very insecure personal device. So the bottom line, we need to be serious about protecting our company from cybercrime, especially on mobile devices. So talk to your IT provider soon to address any of these elements that you might not be currently performing. So if you have any questions, now that your head is full of all this lovely information, please enter them into the chat. Larissa is monitoring that chat, and we'll try to go through any questions. Also, my phone numbers are listed here, as well as my email address. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to call me or email me, and I'll be happy to try to help you with any of those questions or just any general cybersecurity questions. I've been doing this for about 26 years, so there's not a whole lot that I haven't seen. So
we just got a comment from Mark that said, interesting, while viewing this webinar, I received a text from a random number asking me to reply yes to a text if I wanted to earn $500 per week. I don't know about your expert opinion, Ryan, but I would suggest you delete that and do not reply yes, Mark, okay?
Or don't reply at all. Don't reply no or yes.
Oh, good. He did. Okay. Good job, Mark. Does anyone have any other? Okay. So we have another question from Kara. Nowadays, it seems like many businesses use Facebook as another resource. How can we tell if a Facebook page is malicious?
Use my solution and don't get on Facebook. I have a little disdain for Facebook, but honestly, you're going to be looking at the URL. Really, is what I'm kind of saying, where it's a fake Facebook page, right? So maybe it's like that Microsoft example. It's not really spelled correctly. Maybe there's it came as an email. Somebody sent you a link. You got a random text message. Hey, check out my Facebook page. Things like that. So it's not saying that pages on Facebook themselves are going to just randomly be infected, but more so using spoofing Facebook because it's so popular. Everyone uses it. Everyone sends messages from Facebook. And so, typo squatting is what they call it when somebody makes Microsoft into micro FST, is probably one of the most likely ways. So, right. Also checking, you can hover over a link if someone sends you a link in an email, or if there's a link that, that you're seeing anywhere on your computer. Usually you can just hover your mouse over the top of it, and it'll show you the actual destination URL without actually needing to click on it.
Okay. Kara says thanks.
Of course.
Yep. Anyone else have any other questions about mobile device security? I'll give it another minute or so. Well, it seems like we don't have any more questions. Oh, wait. Oh, thank you, Sierra. Sierra says, I just want to say that we have Computerease for our IT support and we couldn't be happier. We love you too.
Thank you, Sierra. I appreciate that. We try hard.
And Mark says, thanks very much.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. And let me, if you can just switch to, so I'm going to read the official conclusion. Thank you, Ryan, and thanks to all our attendees today. Before you go, I'd like to remind you that registration is now open for the February meeting at Orlando's and Maryland Heights. That is going to be the Medicare update. That's very early in the morning, but that's one of the most well-attended events next to the fall conference. And there's always a ton of really great information. You can bring your billers and coders, and it's also continuing continuing education credits for them. So definitely try to make that event. But thank you very much, and I think we will officially conclude today's webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.